Thank you very much for, first of all, Kasara-san, to giving me a chance to talk here. So I made the title quite broad, but I think I'm focusing on one specific research, and I think that would be much more fun to dig in and talk about it. So before I start, this is my third time coming to OIST. The first time was this, I was a attendee of, it's me here, OCNC 2005, which was actually 20 years ago. It's a bit crazy, but and Doya-san is here. And I was a master's student, and I attended OCNC, and I came here, but no building was here. It was only a mountain. And they were saying that, building's gonna, there should be a big institute here. And I never imagined it's gonna be like this. And a couple of years ago, I think it was 2016 or 17, after I'm coming back, I came back from UK. CiNet and OIST had a joint some kind of symposium, and then I came here, and I was very fascinated by the infrastructure of this environment, and I'm very happy to come back. Thanks for Kasara-san. Okay, so I'll go straight into my talk. So I want to talk about perceptual decision making. Okay, so what is perceptual decision making? Perceptual decision making usually describes about decision based on the sensory feature of the particular input. So if you're in the orchard and you want to pick up a reddest looking apple, what do? You focus on one particular feature, which is a reddishness, okay, and decide, okay, which one is red. And the computation and the neuromechanism which allows this perceptual decision making has been extensively studied. Okay, so for the feature of, by tradition, people have often used many features, but motion is often used, which I'm going to use it in my subsequent talk. But like how the motion features are processed in the brain and how that accumulates in the a parietal cortex and how it reaches the decision, and the system makes which is the reddest looking apple. That is extensively studied. Okay? So but at the end of the day, when you go to the orchard and you ask to choose the reddest looking apple, and you just choose, and it's not the end of the day, right? So you have to go and pick it up, and then that becomes like a motor control problem, right? So and for this motor control problem, people turn this into neuroscience or psychology research, framing it as how the optimal muscle activity pattern is learned and generated. Okay? So perhaps the apple isn't very reaching distance, so you can just reach it, or perhaps you have to grab a ladder or something, and then you have to climb it up. So here, it's a lot of study has done to investigate the mechanism, how we control the redundant muscle to make a straight trajectory, or how we learn the new dynamics to make a movement, and how our brain optimizes the error and reduces the error. So as such, so there are a lot of studies about perceptual decision making, and there's a lot of studies about motor control stuff. But there tend to be kind of a dissociation of research, or also the researchers, between perception and action. So one bunch of people are focusing on feature processing related issue, how the input is processed, turned into a decision signal, and how the decision is made. And on the other side, people really focus on the motor control related issue, how we control the muscle. Once we figure out what is the target, how we reach to that target. So this is the output part. But not many people are really focusing on this interaction between perception and action. How do they interact? Okay? So usually people think this as a serial process. You perceive, make a decision, and then you just hand it to a neutral output controller, which is the motor control system. But I was doubting this scheme, and I was from previously I was doing a research based on what is the interaction between these two systems. So I have done a couple of researches and showed that acting changes how we decide and see the environment. Okay? So baseball is a big thing in Japan, as you know, but do you know a guy called Tetsuharu Kawakami? Okay, you know? No, okay. Okay, well, it's not my generation also, but so he's like a legendary baseball player, and he has a famous quote saying that a ball tends to slow down before he hits it, okay? And we thought that this anecdote may be true because he may be well preparing for an action before hitting the ball. So we did a very simple study. I won't go into detail, but in this task, what people had to do is they saw some kind of this disc, and after the disappearance of this disc, you have to make a reaching movement towards the center of the screen, and you have to judge whether this duration of disc was short or long. So you have to classify whether this was presented for a short period or long period. And we found that when you are preparing for subsequent action, people tend to overestimate this duration. And we also show that this overestimation of the duration by motor preparation is basically happening because the brain is increasing the visual information processing capacity during this preparation. How we showed this is we show a series of letters very quick, and then after this presentation of the letters, you have to make a reaching movement again, and afterwards judge whether a particular letter C or G was embedded in this sequence. It's presented very quick, so it's very difficult to see. But when you're preparing for action, it's a bit counterintuitive, but if you're preparing for action, your probability of detecting the target character increases compared to when you're not preparing. So this is something quite interesting, or example of acting changes how we see, because you're not moving, but you're trying to interact with the environment, and this motor control system is changing how we intake the input from the outside world. So another example we showed is that we use this random dot motion. I'll explain in detail afterwards. But random dot motion is like bunches of dots, like 100 dots moving in the random directions. But some of the dots are coherently moving to the right or to the left. And you have to judge whether this is moving to the right or to the left. And then if you think it's moving to the right, you have to move your right manipulandum, this is the robotic handle, straight to the right target. And then if it's moving to the left, you have to move your left hand. Okay? Very simple task. Okay? But what we did was trial by trial, we slowly increase the amount of force required to move this handle for the left hand. Okay? So what's happening is you have to give a bit more stronger force to move this handle. Okay? But because we are doing this trial by trial, the participants don't notice about the increase in the effort of moving one handle. And what happens is, even though the participants keep feeling that they're doing the same task throughout, after increasing the cost for moving the left hand, the probability of judging this motion going to the left decreases. Okay? So it means that people start to avoid making a costly movement, even though they're not realizing about it, right? So this is, again, another example of acting changes how we see and decide, because, the visual stimulus is not changing, the task is not changing, and this cost in the left hand is not dreadfully costly, but still, people tend to change what we see and how we feel, how we decide based on how we act. Okay. So the main thing today I'm going to talk about is in the opposite direction. So until here, I was talking about acting changes how we decide and see. But from here, for this study, I want to talk about whether decision system changes how we learn to act, okay? So the information flow is in a different direction. So this is the main key person for this study is my postdoc, previous postdoc, Kisho, took the main part of this job, work, and many other clever friends. Okay. So I'll start from a very textbook memory, textbook explanation about the memory system, okay? So I think you're familiar with this contextual effect in episodic memory, okay? So memory is, what is memory? So you like learn and encode things. So before the exam, you learn and you study, and then afterwards, you retrieve it, right? So it's in the exam situation, you retrieve what you have learned. So people have continuously shown that if the situation of this learning and situation of this retrieval is governed under a same context, the performance is higher. Okay? So this is called the contextual effect in episodic memory. So the clear, a very seminal example done by Gordon Badley is they went to like a beach of, it was Sussex or somewhere. They went to a beach of Sussex or somewhere, and they grabbed these people and asked them to learn a word list. Okay, and half of the people learned the word list under the water, and other half of the people learned the word list on the shore. Okay. Afterwards, they were asked to retrieve what they have learned. And then half of the people who learned the word list under the water retrieved it under the water, but other half on the shore. Okay? And people on the who learned on the shore, half of them went under the water and retrieved it, and then other half did it on the shore. So people found that for the people who learned the word list under the water, their performance is better under the water than the shore. Okay? And for the people who learned on the shore, had a better performance on the shore than under the water. Okay? So this is very interesting because the task is to learn the word list. The water has nothing to do with anything, right? But this clearly tells you that our memory system memorize tagging the target like word list by the information on the background, which is the context. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about motor memory. So this is about like what people call decorrelative memory, right? And I want to talk about motor memory. And motor memory is also embedded in contexts. And has anyone ever saw this video clip? So this is a lovely video clip. So let's see. Yep. So this is she's a Alzheimer's disease patient. Okay. So she doesn't have a memory, what her previous memory, and she's I think in the hospital Barcelona or somewhere. But she used to be a prima donna in a ballet company I think it was in Uruguay or somewhere. Okay. And then, so she has no memory about the past, but once this music comes out, then her motor memory is like pulled out and seems to like move the body like a move the body and retrieve the motor memory. What I really like, kind of fascinated about this is this doesn't necessarily mean that she starts to remember, consciously remember about what she was doing, but seems to be that this motor memory itself is pulled out by the contextual cue. It seems like, you know, like a bit like a marionette. Okay. So we wanted to test motor memory in the lab settings, and this is how we do. Okay. So we use this this haptic device called Phantom, and we program it and to restrict its movement in a 2D plane, virtual 2D plane. And then we project the display on here, and then under the display, people move this manipulandum to do the task. Okay? So you can see that here, the movement is restricted in the 2D, and then on the this is the monitor that people are seeing, and this white cursor, not white one. So this white cursor is the cursor represent the position of the hand under this display. Okay? So you see the target, and you can just move. Okay? See the target and move. Okay. So it's just like, you know, sliding something very light on the desk. Okay? So this is the task we use. And so we often use a force field to make people learn a particular dynamics, and then use that as like a content of motor memory. And this is how we do. So first, when the subject coming to the lab, grab the manipulandum and they ask, this is a display, as you see, and they ask to like make a straight reaching movement to the target by moving the manipulandum. Okay? And this is very easy. They'll just do a straight movement. Okay? And then, for example, if this is like a deviation of the movement from the straight movement, then you can make a very straight movement. But then we add we're going to add a perturbation, which we use a force field. So for this force field, we often use a velocity-dependent force field. Velocity-dependent force field is a force pushing you in a perpendicular direction to the target, depending on the velocity of your movement. So if you don't know anything and suddenly we switch on the force field, what happens is people like make this kind of movement. Okay? So because it's a velocity-dependent force field, your movement is usually fast in the middle. So this is a point where you push the most. So that is the reason you're going to be like curved like this. So you're going to have a big deviation here. But humans are very clever. Our brain is very clever and efficient. If we do this for around 100 trials, people just learn to make a straight movement amazingly. And then this is they can produce a counteracting force depending on the perturbation, depending on the velocity of your movement. So then they'll start to make a straight movement. Okay? So this is when we say the people learn the force field. Okay? So how do we quantify how they learned? Is we have two ways. So one is a catch trial, which is we suddenly turn off the force. Okay? So if we suddenly turn off the force, people have learned to counteract the force depending on the movement velocity in this direction, because there was a force from this direction. But if the force is switched off, you'll be like making a big movement to the opposite side. Okay? So making a big movement to the opposite side means that they have actually learned the force, right? But there's a kind of a big problem of this type of catch trial, a bit nerdy things, but because how people learn the force field is they are try to optimize their movement to reduce the error, right? Like this. Then if we suddenly give a catch trial and then have a big error in the opposite direction, that will perturb the learning system also. So what we do these days is we have this kind of error clamp trials. This error clamp trial is we set kind of a channel that if even participants' movement is forced to make a straight movement to the target. But we measure the force they are applying to this virtual wall. Okay? Like this. Okay? So they would be making no kinematic error, but before learning the force, they would not be pushing the wall at all, but after learning the force field, they'll start to push the wall, right? So this can be a nice way to quantify how much they have learned the force field. Okay? So this is kind of like equivalent of the word list for the motor learning system. So there's a big question in this motor control research is, so I started the story with the contextual things, and then so in the motor control field, there was also a big question of what becomes a contextual cue for motor memory. Okay? So let's ask someone to make a straight movement to this yellow target. And sometimes you'll be pushed to the right, sometimes you push to the left. There's no way you can learn, right? So you want to make a straight movement, but sometimes you're going to push to the right, sometimes push to the left, you won't learn. Okay? So some people thought that, okay, let's give them a context. Okay, so if the background is red, let's red, you push to the right. The background is blue, you push push to the right. Blue, push to the left. But surprisingly, people cannot learn at all. Okay, so this is not like people say, you know, this won't happen, but people really don't learn. But to be fair, we don't say that, you know, okay, red, you're going to push to the right, blue, you're going to push to the left. You know, people have to learn incidentally. Okay, so what this means that, you know, people cannot really associate with this unrelated visual cue to a particular type of perturbation. So then a big series of studies started and say, you know, what is going to be the contextual cue for motor memory? So one thing is the way you hold the handle, right? So one is if you hold the handle like this, and then you push to the right, and when you hold the handle like this, then you push to the left. Then you can learn to force. So the way you grab the handle can be a contextual cue for motor memory, but this is not really fair because, you know, the way your muscle is moved is completely different by moving this and that, right? So another clever way is done by Howard and Daniel Wolpert's lab is so they asked the subject to make a two-step reaching movement. Beep, 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 beep. Okay, and then when the target is on the left, you're pushed to the right, and when the target is on the right, sorry, my left and right is mixed up. Sorry. For example, when the target is left, you're pushed to the right. When the target is right, you push to the left. Okay, so then until here, the trajectory is completely same that people can learn to these force fields, right? So this means that the future plan of movement can be a nice contextual cue for motor memory to learn the two force fields. So another one is the group of Tokyo University has done is a state of irrelevant effector. So when making a one-hand unimanual movement, you push to the right. And when you're making a bimanual movement, you push to the left. Okay? So if you're only seeing the right hand moving a completely same trajectory, you sometimes push to the right, sometimes push to the left. There's no way you can learn. But if you just associate with the movement of the other effector, then you can learn two force fields, right? So state of the irrelevant effector can be a contextual cue for motor memory. So interim summary until here is that as like a declarative memory, motor memory is also embedded in contexts. And until now, motor memory has been thought to only associate with the contextual cues that is directly relevant for the ongoing motor control. So, but recently we showed that this uncertainty of decision prior to action can be a contextual cue for motor memory, pushing the boundary a bit to the cognitive side of the contextual cue for motor memory. Okay. Okay, is it clear until now? Okay. Okay. So the things that we start to think is like this. The future actions can depend on the quality of the decision you make. Okay. So, for example, let's think about this guy. Okay. This guy is kicking the ball to the right. And that was a very easy decision for him. Okay? Then what he can do is he can swiftly move to the next position to prepare for the next action. Okay? So this guy was in a very difficult situation. There's so many opponents surrounding him, but at the end of the day, he made a right hand. He could kick the ball to the right. Okay, so kicking the right after the difficult decision, then what happens is you're not sure whether you're going to success. So you have to prepare for the failure. Okay. So future actions depend on the uncertainty of the current decision made. Okay? So if you look back into the literature, okay, so this is a typical perceptual decision-making model, which is a drift diffusion model, where for the drift diffusion model is treat the decision-making as an evidence accumulation system. And then your evidence is accumulated to either of the, for example, if there's a two choice, either of the two choices, if the evidence is accumulated to the bound, then you make a choice. Okay? If decision is easy, the evidence accumulates quickly to the bound. If the situation is very difficult, the evidence accumulates slowly and reaches the bound. Okay? But the implicit assumption here is that if the evidence reaches a bound, no matter whether it was difficult or not, a same motor control system would produce the same motor command. But if you look into the literature, like in the neurophysiological literature, so like frontal eye field is like a motor control system for eye movement. Those areas, you can see that the neural activity represents the certainty or uncertainty of the ongoing decision. And it's same for the motor areas when the task is moving the hand. So we started to think, perhaps the uncertainty of decision prior to the action can be a contextual cue for the motor memory. Okay? So this is where we started. So we set up this kind of task. Participants sat in the center of the screen, grabbed the manipulandum here, and then saw random dot motion. As I said, a random dot motion is like 100 dots coming out, and then they're moving in the random direction. But in my case, some of the dots are coherently moving to the right or to the left, and participant has to judge which direction the majority of the dots are moving. Is it moving to the right or is it moving to the left? Well, if they think it's moving to the right, they have to move this handle towards the right target. If they think the thing is moving to the left, they have to move the handle to the left target. Very simple. So a good thing about using a random dot motion is you can change the difficulty of the uncertainty of the decision. Okay? So here, 100% coherent motion means that all the dots are moving to the right or moving to the left. Okay? So it's a very, very easy situation, certain situation. Then here, the guy is looking into 100% coherent movement to the right and then making right. But we can also make it very difficult and very uncertain, make it as like 3% point motion. 3% point motion is out, well, 3 out of 100 is just moving to the right or left. So it's extremely difficult. So here, the guy is looking to very difficult dots. And then at the end of the day, he decides to move into right. Okay, this and this, both completely same action, moving to the right. But the prior decision is different. For this movement, we apply a velocity-dependent force field. Okay, so what the subject has to do is doing the task, and then while moving, you'll be like pushed to right, pushed by the force field. So they are asked to like make a straight movement. Okay. So how we quantify the motor memory is same as I explained before. At the beginning, people were crazy. Even they make a nice decision or whatever, the trajectory is like moving around. But after like 100 tries or something, they make a very straight movement. Sometimes we have this error clamp trials and quantify how much they have learned this force field. Okay. So this is the experiment 1. Does decision uncertainty depend formation? Is the motor memory formed based on the decision uncertainty? Is the question here. So we had 2 groups of participants. Okay, one group of participants learned this force field always after this certain 100% point motion. Okay? Other half of participants learned this force field always after the 3% point motion. So very certain situation, very uncertain situation, but learning the completely same thing. Okay? And after they have learned, people encountered many different levels of uncertainty. Okay? And what we wanted to see is what you learned here, how does it apply to different uncertainty levels? Okay? So first, this is the result of the learning. Okay, so this vertical axis just treated as the index of how much you have properly learned the force field. Okay? So red is a certain group of people, blue is the uncertain group of people. No matter whether the prior decision is certain or uncertain, people can really learn the force field. Okay? So if you're just looking here, it looks like there's no difference in the learning at all. But we want to see whether this formation or this learning is restricted to the level they have learned, the decision uncertainty level they have learned it. So one hypothesis is that, okay, so vertical axis is the amount of recall of the motor memory, horizontal axis is the motion coherence level, and the red is a certain decision, blue is the uncertain decision. If decision and action are completely independent, okay, so if you learn the action, you can do that action any way you can, any way you want. Then what happens is, you know, if you learn the action in one easy situation, you can do that action, whether it is even a situation is difficult, or in an uncertain situation, same. So it doesn't matter. But another context-dependent hypothesis is that when you learn something in a certain situation, your performance is good in a certain situation, but not in the uncertain situation. And more importantly, if you learn something in the uncertain situation, you'll be good in the uncertain situation, but not in the certain situation. And this was exactly what we found. It was very surprising for us. So people who learned the force field after a very easy decision, they're very good in easy situation, but not in the not in the difficult situation, and opposite for the uncertain people who learn the force field after the uncertain decision. So what this means is that the motor memory seems to be specific to the uncertainty level of the decision. Okay. Is it clear until here now? Okay. Okay. So So we found that there seemed to be a motor memory specific to the uncertainty level of the decision. So we want to push a bit more and say whether people can separate the two different force fields if associated with two different decision uncertainty levels. So we prepared a couple of experiments. In one experiment, 100% coordinate motion was associated with a strong force field. 3% coordinate motion was associated with a weak force field. I'm showing this association for the sake of simplicity, but of course it was counterbalanced. Some people had 3% and strong force field and 100% and the weak force field. Okay, but anyway, so a particular decision uncertainty level was associated with a strong force field. Another uncertainty level was associated with weak force field, and then people learned the weak force field and they did the task. So if people can learn the two force field at the same time, then well, after the 100% coordinate motion, people should be able to produce a strong counteracting force, and for the 3% coordinate motion, weak counteracting force. Okay? And if they cannot dissociate the two, then this should be somewhere between. We also did the opposing force field, where 100% coordinate motion was associated with a clockwise perturbation, 3% coordinate motion was associated with a counterclockwise perturbation, and then asked the subject to learn these two force fields simultaneously. And then if people can use this prior decision as a contextual cue, then what people should do is 100% coordinate motion. They should produce a counteracting force in one particular direction, and if the situation is uncertain, in the opposite direction. So we wanted to make sure that this is not, the contextual cue is not simply the visual cue, okay? So what we did was like this, okay? So it's almost completely the same as this opposing situation, but people did not have to make any decision at all, okay? So what they did was they saw, for example, they saw 100% coordinate motion, they saw it, and after the disappearance of 100%, this random dot motion, a target would remain, one of the target remains, and they have to move to that direction, okay? So what this means is that they don't have to make any decision, right, left decision about this random dot motion, but the visual cue itself exists, okay? So if, as we predict, if the decision uncertainty is important, in this case, although the situation is almost same between these two situations, people should not be able to learn the two force fields, okay? Okay, so this is the result. For the magnitude, yes, people can produce strong force for the strong situation, weak force for the weak situation. For the opposing force field, yes, people can produce a counteracting force depending on the decision uncertainty in context. And also, even though the situation is almost completely the same, if they don't make any decision, then they cannot learn, differentiate the two different force fields. Okay. So we want to go a bit more further, okay? So as we showed that people can differentiate or simultaneously learn two different force fields depending on the decision uncertainty context. But we say decision uncertainty context, but what is it? Is it an uncertainty about the sensory input per se? Or is it something really about the A-modal decision? So this is what we want to dig into. So for this, we prepared two different visual stimulus, okay? So one is a random dot motion, 100% coordinate motion, 3% coordinate motion. This is what we will always keep using throughout the experiments, okay? But we prepared another type of visual stimulus, which is a sequence of the left and right arrows. Okay? So what the participant has to do is, in the random dot motion case, you have to judge which way it's going, and if it's going to the right, you move to the right. Okay. In the sequence arrow stimulus, they see a sequence of arrows, which is very quickly presented, 20 arrows, and then after the sequence, they have to judge which arrow, right or left, was presented more frequently. And if they think the right arrow is presented more frequently, they move to the right. If it's left, move to the left. Okay? Then changing the probability of the right and left arrow can change the uncertainty level. Okay? If it's like a 9-1, then it's very, very easy. But if it's 11-9, then it's very difficult. Okay? So this is like a pilot experiment before designing this. This dotted one is the motion stimulus, and this is a field line is arrow stimulus, and vertical axis is the confidence rate of the participant. Confidence rate is a subjective uncertainty evaluation. Okay? So if you see this motion coherence level, if it's 100% coherent motion, your confidence rating is 6. 6 means that. So the variation is from 0 to 6. So 6 means kind of maximum. And then if it's 3% coherent motion, the confidence is very low, something around like 3 or something. Okay? And then for the arrows, you can see that if it's like 11-9, then the confidence rate is something around 3 to 4. And then if it's 18-2, then the confidence rate is very, very high. So we can kind of match the confidence level, okay, but prepare the different visual stimulus. Okay, how we use this. So if people learned the force field, so associate 100% coherent motion, so easy decision to strong force field, uncertain stimulus to weak force field. And then after they have learned, we present again a 100% coherent motion or 3% coherent motion, but sometimes it's 90% arrow or 55% arrow. Okay? So the important thing is that for the arrow stimulus, it's never ever associated with the force field, right? So they have never experienced any error based on this decision. So so basically they don't have to produce any force here, but any force they tend to produce during the presentation of this arrow judgment is necessarily from the learning from the random dot motion. Yeah, this is just what I just said, okay? So if the uncertainty in context is basically about the visual uncertainty, random dot motion, yes, they may be able to produce, differentiate, but if it turns to the arrow, then it shouldn't. There should be no transfer. But if uncertainty in context is really about the action or decision uncertainty, then what they have learned here should transfer to the situation with different visual stimulus. Okay. Now the logic is quite complicated. Is everyone following me? Is it okay? Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay. So when they learned the force, they learned the motion. They learned the force with the motion, and then when they're tested with the motion, yes, they can differentiate the two force fields. This is just a replication of the previous study. And then, importantly, when the people are exposed to this arrow stimulus and made an action, you can still find a difference. So this is just replotting this, and then there's a weak but a significant correlation here. So the difference between the strong and weak means that how much you can differentiate the two force field, right? So we take each individual's difference between this force field, counteracting force for the motion stimulus, and plot it against their arrow stimulus. then you can see like a mild correlation here. This means that the people who learn to differentiate the force based on decision uncertainty, the motion transfers more to the novel arrow stimulus situation. We have time.
Maybe better to
wrap up. Okay. Okay. So yeah. Sorry. So this is a bit complicated. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just skip this. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So in summary, actions learned following certain or uncertain decisions only partially transfer to actions following uncertain decisions. Okay. And we show that people were able to learn two different force fields if each perturbation was preceded by a different decision uncertainty level. And it transfers of transfer of motor memory across different sensory stimuli with matched uncertainty levels shows that decision uncertainty is the context for motor memory. And this is a bit geeky stuff, but the planning of the uncertainty level at the planning stage can be a contextual cue for motor memory. Okay, I'll just skip these. Okay, so just to repeat, so previously people thought that physical stimuli directly involved in motor planning control has been shown to work as a contextual for motor memory, but we push this a bit and say the internal inferential state about the decision can be used as a contextual cue to retrieve the appropriate motor memory. So what this really tells us is that decision and action are tightly linked than we have been thought, subserving a basis of our efficient daily behavior regarding uncertainties. Okay. So this is like, I'm gonna start talking a bit about something I am been thinking, but not really boiled down yet. But this is the way people have thought. Okay, all the high order things are happening in the high order areas, and then and decision and cognition and perception happening, and then if you want to act to the environment, that conversion to action system, right? And this action system is just a single thing. Okay, and it's a neutral output channel. And what we are starting to show maybe is that depending on the cognitive state, the brain is in that state, and we are learning action based on that state. So maybe depending on the cognitive state of the brain, an action is kind of formed. Okay, and this is what we have been shown in this study I explained today. And another radical idea may be that how we interact with the world, there's action, and action can be clustered into a particular repertoires. Okay, perhaps that is forming the category of cognition, and that's another possibility, right? And that is perhaps something I explained a bit in the beginning, which those like motor preparation or like interacting with the environment changes how we perceive and how we act. And one of the reasons I came to OIST this time is to talk with Kasara-san, that using his amazing techniques, perhaps we can dig a bit more into this way of thinking and expand the way we think about a cognition or perception from action system. Okay, so this is it. I'm from the CiNet in Osaka. So if you have time, Tani-san has visited CiNet recently, but if you have time, please stop by. Okay, and just to repeat, Kisho is a guy who was the main contributor of the study I explained today, and I'm very happy that he got a position in Nagoya University recently. And yeah, that's it. Sorry, the last bit was a bit of a rush, but thank you very much.